Hello, you're listening to the IoT Weekly Podcast. Hello and welcome to episode number 30 of the IoT Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Gearforge Software. My name is Matthew, and I'm joined by my co-host and good friend, Cliff. How you doing today, Cliff?
Doing really well, Matthew. Yourself?
I'm doing awesome. Today has been a great day so far. So we are so excited. Today we've got a special interview with Nick from Vitals Aware Services, and we'll tell you all about that. Well, Nick will tell you all about that here during the episode, but it's just honestly one of the best uses for IoT technology that we've ever seen. And I certainly am super excited to have him join us today. And Cliff, I think you feel just the same way.
I'm right there with you, Matthew. And I really love what they've done with this. I think this is a perfect use case for IoT. I mean, it hits it right on the head.
Yeah, absolutely. And technology that's doing some good in the world. So we're super excited to share it. We're going to just start out here and say what they really need are some advocates to get users signed up for the app. So we do encourage you to listen to the episode. And then if you know of people that could be helped by this, or you are one of them, it would be great to help advocate for what they're doing. So you can hear about everything they're doing during the podcast episode. And if you want to get in touch, thevitalsapp.com is the website. They're on Facebook at The Vitals App and on Twitter at The Vitals App. So easy to remember. And so we're just super excited. We hope you enjoy the interview. But before we get there, it's time for a word from our sponsor.
Yes. Well, our show sponsor is Gearforge Software. Gearforge Software provides expert technical consulting, so every client can go from ideation success. Your idea plus Gearforge expertise equals success. You can learn more at gearforgesoftware.com.
Today, we are thrilled to get an opportunity to chat with Nick Tietz, co-founder and chief digital officer from Vitals Aware Services. Vitals is a new app. It protects people with visible and invisible conditions and disabilities. Nick, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate being here.
Well, I got to say, we had a little chance to chat yesterday, and I am so excited about this interview. The stuff that you are doing with Vitals, I think it's maybe the coolest use of technology I've ever seen. I think it is just great.
Awesome. No, thank you. We've got a really, really hardworking team. We are trying to move as fast as we can to get this in the hands of as many families as possible and as many first responders. So police departments, county sheriffs, fire, and EMTs as we can. So thanks for having us and helping us to get the word out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great. And I'm super excited to talk about the technology and kind of the social good that you're doing. But before we do that, I'd really be pretty interested to learn a little bit more about you. Could you talk to us about maybe how did you get interested in technology?
Sure. Well, to be honest, I really started when I was just a kid. I think my parents always had a computer. This is back in the Apple IIe days. I went to computer camp. I learned how to program this little robot. Somehow, Channel 5, which is a local news station here, local ABC news station, came and did a little story on all these little kids that were learning how to program, and my parents have a little video clip of me saying that, well, I think my mom and dad are going to buy me a computer. And I think it just kind of never stopped there. So
that's fun. Did you ever program? Do you remember the turtle? You'd program
yes.
Logo.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Yes. It was a blast. And so I've just kind of always been, a tech geek. I like playing with things. I like exploring. I love problem solving, and it's just been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's great. And then from there, so from that kind of early start and interest in technology, where did that take you?
Well, I just kind of kept going, and I would say, although I always used technology, I definitely went through a point where I was really focused on more marketing communications and how we could use technology in a bunch of different ways. And I found myself at a company called The Nerdery. It was, one of the at the time one of the fastest growing software development companies in the Midwest. And I kind of helped co-found a UX department, and we grew the team to about 26 people, and we got to build a lot of technology for a lot of different industries. And it was it was a ton of fun. But what I learned through that process is that I really wanted to build or use those, I kind of call them superpowers of user experience. And what I figured out is that I could actually use them for more than just technology. I left the nerdery and went to a marketing firm that ended up working with the Minneapolis school district. And we started to use the same skills that I used to build technology to think differently and create different experiences for the public education system. And that was really when it all came together, that I didn't just have to build technology. I could do a lot of different things to shape human behaviors and try to improve the things around us. That led me to a company called Lifetime Fitness, which is a big box retailer in the health and fitness space. And I spent 5 years there. I was the director of innovation, and I spent a lot of time trying to help people get more fit, work on their fitness behaviors, but using technology as kind of the backbone for how we help people get as happy and healthy as they want.
Yeah, and so I mean, technology basically it's more than neat gadgets, right? I think a
Right.
lot of times we focus on maybe the flashy uses for technology, but the reality is it does change behavior
Mhm.
under the hood, and the most transformative technologies for both good and bad are the ones that actually change behavior.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah. So that's really interesting. And so what else? I mean, so there's a path between that and like sort of leading to what you're doing now. You got involved in some maybe nonprofits as well.
Yeah, so the whole time while I was doing the professional thing, I gave a lot of my time volunteering and doing pro bono creative work for nonprofits around the Twin Cities, most notably an organization called Pacer Center, which is a national organization located in Bloomington, Minnesota. That's a champion for adults, families, and youth with disabilities, and just I met with a lot of families. I did a lot of marketing communications, advisement and consulting and creative work, and it just led me down the path that there's a lot we can do to help these groups of people that they need assistive pieces of technology to help them. And the other co-founders and I we're also going around and we were meeting with other nonprofits like the Minnesota Brain Alliance, Meals on Wheels, Fraser Center, and talking to them and exploring different ways that they could help serve their communities. And we got hooked up with the Autism Society of Minnesota, where we met their director and an officer named Rob Zink, who is also known as the Autism Cop. And what we noticed in all of these stories, that there's this pattern that was emerging between all these people that these nonprofits were serving, and that was that they can't always communicate very well, especially when they're in an escalated state about what's going on with them. And on the flip side, I think the thing that Rob said was like, I wish there was a way that I could know the difference between the people that needed my help and the people that were quote unquote up to no good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really where this idea came, where maybe there's a different way that we could help individuals that have autism, PTSD, schizophrenia, bipolar, Down syndrome, deaf, I mean, there's a lot of different people with invisible or visible conditions and disabilities, but they can't always communicate to themselves and law enforcement. Even when they have the training, they're still missing a critical component, which is a little bit of information on that individual so that they can deliver better customer care.
Yeah, so that was sort of the core idea behind it. Basically, you spotted this pattern as you're talking to these different organizations of this difficulty communicating with law enforcement. And that was sort of the core idea behind this Vitals Aware Services, right? Is
Yeah.
there's a missing piece. And this is really important stuff, right? You shared with me yesterday a few statistics about what's going on.
Right.
You want to share some of those now?
Yeah. Well, what happened is we dove into the problem, and we met with and interviewed lots of police officers and talked to different police departments and talked to families. And, I mean, what we found is that, 1 in 5 US adults will experience a mental health crisis. And the police data keeps showing that the numbers continue to go up. In fact, the number of mental health calls have more than doubled since 2011. And 1 in 10 response calls by law enforcement involve somebody in a mental health crisis. But I think the thing that really, it really got us going was that there was a 2-year study by the Rudderman Family Foundation, and they studied, police calls and police reports. And what they found is that, of the people that were shot and killed by the police, 50% of them had a disability or a mental illness. And that number to me it blows me away every time. I go back and look at it all the time because I just want to make sure that I read it right. I mean,
right.
that's half.
Yeah.
That's half. And it blows me away every time. And that's why we're working so hard to get this in the hands of as many people that want it. Because I think that together we can make a big difference on that.
Yeah, and that's one of your big goals, is to change that number, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And so I think that, that is a shocking statistic. And I think that, I'd be curious to understand, could you speak a little bit to kind of the current state of things out there?
Yeah.
And why is this, this app, I guess, so revolutionary? And I think part of the reason for that is, we need to understand what it's like without the app.
Right. Well, I think that's a really great point. I mean, we, and it was, before we dove into this problem, I didn't quite understand it. And, really the current state is that today, I should say the technology of today is paper. And what I mean by that is that, law enforcement, fire departments, EMTs, when we go to safety seminars with them, they want information from the community so they can better serve them. But they ask them to fill out a sheet of paper so that they can keep it back at the office. And that paper, if you can imagine, it's like anything, it's not getting updated. It's in a file drawer. Even the parents that we've talked to, they ask for things to be, flagged in the different systems that police departments have. But even the problem with that is that those systems aren't shared between departments. There's just not an easy way for law enforcement to understand, all the unique characteristics, about, individuals in their community. And there's overwhelming demand from families that want to voluntarily share this information, but there's just not a good way.
Well,
so that's where we come in.
Yeah, and let me ask this too. So you said kind of the primary technology of today is paper, and I mean that doesn't fit very well with a first responder situation, right? Where I need the information immediately, I need it in my hands, I need it before I'm in the situation, right?
Right. That's right. Especially, unfortunately, the incidents that we continue to hear in the news are incidents where law enforcement, will come to arrive on the scene, or a first responder or an EMT, and they're trying to help in this situation, but they have to tackle the situation based on what they're observing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where their observations or their powers of observations are only as good as the information that's in front of them. And if they perceive the situation to be heading in one direction, they're going to take the action that they've been trained to do. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what we keep hearing about. And so it's an outcome. The stats that we were talking about is an outcome of this situation. And we can do something about it if we take a proactive approach, which is to close that information gap and provide information that can help, officers, they get into the job because they want to protect, they want to help people, but they just don't have any information, and that's where I think we can there's a big opportunity here.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, Nick. You mentioned earlier something, invisible and visible conditions, I think is what you said, and I'm just curious. Could you explain what that means?
Yeah. So, we were talking to a lot of parents, and we had police officers in the room, and we were doing post-it note sessions and drawing pictures, and they both kept saying, like, we don't always know what's going on. We walk up to somebody, and if we don't understand, it's like, and we just kind of were like, well, it's almost like there's this invisible condition that, like, they just can't see. And what if there was a way to make it visible? Meaning, like, what if you knew that this person had autism? Well, then I could handle the situation differently, because I would then understand that, arms flapping, or, when they're not making eye contact with me, those are not signs of defiance. Those are signs of the condition that the individual has. Somebody with Parkinson's or MS that is walking down the street, not in a straight line, those are not signs that they are impaired or inebriated. Those are signs of their condition. And we hear countless stories from families where they are sometimes questioned or stopped by law enforcement because they're doing their job. But there's just, maybe they could do it. Maybe we could improve what they're doing, and give them the information to best handle the situation, for those families that want that. And that's what we mean by, making the invisible visible.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yes. Thanks for that. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. So Nick, let's talk a little bit about how this works. Could you describe the Vitals app and sort of what does it do?
Yeah. So again, Vitals is a new app that helps protect people with visible and invisible conditions and disabilities by voluntarily communicating critical information in real time to law enforcement and first responders. Simply, the app allows individuals and caregivers to maintain a personalized profile that they can share with law enforcement and any first responder that has our app. Basically, we are allowing families and individuals to control the narrative on that officer's phone, or as we kind of say, at the tap of a button. That's something that just hasn't existed before. So that's essentially what the Vitals app is doing.
And so how does it actually share this information? Is this something that law enforcement has access to 24/7 about the individual, or what is the sharing mechanism? How does that work?
Sure. So there's three parts, three pieces and parts to the system. So there's a caregiver app that helps individuals and guardians manage their profile that they create. Every individual that signs up for the service is assigned a Vitals beacon. It's basically a little Bluetooth-enabled device that they carry with them. It looks like a keychain. We have one that's a form factor like a credit card, and then we have one called a tag beacon that some individuals will slip in a pocket. They'll put it on a belt or their wrist or even their ankle. And when that beacon is within 80 feet of an authorized first responder, meaning a first responder that signed up for the vital service, a little coded signal is sent over to the officer's phone. It goes up into our private and cloud server, and it temporarily pulls down that individual's profile so that the first responder has access to the information that's been loaded in. And this all happens in real time. So there's nothing that law enforcement needs to do. There's nothing that the individual needs to do. It just kind of auto-magically passes that information over to the officer and gives them the tools that they need to best interact.
So is this something, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, well, I was just saying the important thing that we try to share with families is that that information, when that individual walks out of this kind of safety bubble that we've created for them, then law enforcement doesn't have any information. They can't search. They can't search the system. They can't find people that way. It only happens when they're within about 80 feet.
Yeah, interesting. And is this something that that the officer actually has to go in and like check the app?
No, not at all. Once, so when an authorized department signs up with Vitals, we take their government issued IDs and we create special accounts for them. And then they load the app on their smartphone, on their iOS or Android device. And it's just running in the background listening. When it picks up this little scrambled signal that's coming off of the Vitals beacon, it does its work. And it's really cool. We've been getting a lot of great feedback from law enforcement about interactions that they're having here in Minnesota with individuals that have the vital service.
Yeah. Do you have any stories?
Yeah. So actually, we have two stories. We just got them in the last week. We had the county services contacted us. They said that at one of the technical colleges, in Minnesota, this dad arrived and he went to go find the school resource officer because he wanted to make sure that they understood that his son, who has Asperger's, was going to be on campus 3 days a week. And if anything happened with his son, he just wanted to make sure that they kind of understood what was going on. And but what was really cool about that is that when they met with the school resource officer, they said, "Hey, are you part of the Vitals program? I heard it was in this area." And the officer said, "Yes, it is." And he's like, "Okay, cool. Well, my son has it. We just kind of wanted to see if it shows up on your phone." And it did. He pulled out his phone. His son's profile was right there. The officer tapped on it. It had a little bit of information in there. It said that his son liked Star Wars. The officer and his son started having a conversation about Star Wars, and it just changed the way that even those two are going to interact from now on whenever they see each other on campus. And that was one of those special moments. And what I know some of the chiefs have been talking about. There's just new ways for us to connect and engage with people in the community. And then we got a call earlier this week about, it's really the thing we've been waiting for, is a non-incident, meaning there's an interaction where nothing happened.
Yeah.
But everything happened, and it truly transformed this officer's, the way that he's delivering care. So what happened real quick is that there was a fatal crash on Saturday night. There were two fathers that were killed, and the local police department come and they had to shut down this 2-lane road so that they could process the situation and take care of everything. And as the traffic started to line up, this woman parked her car and got out, and she walked up to a reserve officer of this local police department and said, "Hey, I'm trying to get home. Do you know when the road's going to be open?" And the officer said, "Well, I'm sorry, the road won't be open for a while. We've got an accident up ahead, and we're trying to reroute traffic. You're going to need to turn around and find a different way." And the woman said, well, I need to go home this way. I can't go another way. And he said, well, I'm really sorry. You're going to have to wait or turn around. And she started to get a little bit more nervous and, just said, well, this is the way I need to go home. She's like, I can't go home another way. I don't know any other ways home. And so she went back to her car and kind of sat in it. And, the officer called in and said, hey, I have a woman here. I think she might be impaired. She's a little bit anxious. She's confused, doesn't know how to get home. I need a little bit more help. So a sheriff's deputy arrived on the scene and they talked about the situation. And as the sheriff's deputy turned to go talk to the woman, he got an alert on his phone. And it was a vitals alert. And when a vitals alert goes off on an officer's phone, it's like any standard notification like you get if you get a text message or a Facebook message. It buzzes if you have vibration turned on, and it beeps if you have your audio on. So he pulled out his phone and he looked at it, and it said that there was a woman that had a cognitive disability that was around him. And as he walked closer to her car, he was able to quickly identify from the profile that this was the same person. And so when he approached the car, he was able to talk to her by name. Hey, Caitlin, are you Caitlin? And she said, yeah, I am. He said, can you tell me a little bit more about, what's going on? Like, I heard that you need to go home this way. Like, how can I help you? And she explained what was going on. And, she said, I don't know any other way home. And, I have to stay on this road. And so the officer went back into the profile, scrolled to the bottom, hit the phone number, and called her mom. And the mom said, yep, you know what? She left a little bit ago. I only let her drive up to Walmart. I tell her to stay on this main road because I don't want her to get lost on the way home. And, the deputy said, hey, well, do you think she could follow me home? I mean, I could guide her back. And, they asked her, she said yes. And the officer, basically escorted her back to her house. She just followed his car. Those are the things that we're talking about. Like, this is truly, an everyday tool that's there to support and help people that have, invisible conditions, instead of something else happening to her because, the initial officer thought she might be, impaired. No, she just needed help. And, that's what we're trying to do with this tool. I mean, that's how we think it can help. There are extreme cases where people are in crisis or in an escalated state, and we think it's going to prevent them from getting a serious injury or killed. But even in these everyday moments, boy, we really think this could make a big difference for families.
Well, it's kind of amazing. I mean, that's such a cool story. And it's actually kind of amazing the difference that just that information, like it's incredible that the officer was able to go up to the person and communicate by name, right off the bat. So much information about what's going on. The fact that he can just call her mom, it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, and we tell families, we encourage them to put as much or as little information in the profile as possible. The way I describe it to them is that it's almost like you being right there on the scene, even when you're not. So what would you want that first responder to know about this person that you love, whether it's your child, whether it's your parent, it could be your loved one that lives in a group home. You just never know, but as much or as little information as you want. This information's private and secure. It's only available to you as the caregiver. And law enforcement and first responders, so fire and EMT, they only get the information when they're within that 80-foot safety bubble. So, we're doing everything we can to protect this information. It's all encrypted. And the only way that first responders even get access to it is if they sign up and become a Vitals first responder and get access to the Vitals app.
Well, I think it's really kind of it's kind of important to note that 80-foot. I mean, you called it a safety bubble earlier.
Mm-hmm.
That seems really important to me. The fact that for two reasons. One is I think for privacy reasons, it's kind of cool that they only have access to the information when they absolutely need it. But I also think it's kind of cool that it they don't need to take action. The first responder doesn't have to take action to get the information. The information is prompted to them at the moment they need it,
Yeah.
which is such a huge difference from the current state of things.
Right. Right.
It's on paper in a filing cabinet somewhere where it can't get accessed.
Right.
It's pretty revolutionary, really.
Well, and the game changer is that, not only does it provide it at their fingertips, but there's no geographic boundary for this information being shared. And what I mean by that is, so even if you do fill out that sheet of paper, we know some counties around the country have moved to registration systems, but we don't need a registrar of people that have disabilities. What we
Right.
need is the information to be shared freely,
Mm-hmm.
and to authorize people, I should say. And so, our service, our big vision is that, every law enforcement, first responder, and EMT across the country would have this on their phone, so that, right now, if you're in the Twin Cities and you go up to Brainerd and Baxter area, which is a resort area, those officers and first responders have the app. So if you go out of your neighborhood, they have the most up-to-date and current information on your loved one, because they want to deliver the same care that your local police department does. And whether you go to Disneyland or New York or California or anywhere in the country, you could have people there that have the information that you want them to have to keep your loved one safe, especially if they have, an invisible or visible condition. And if they are in an escalated state, man, we just think that this is a real game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. Nick, I'm wondering if you could just describe a little bit more about the service, and specifically from the standpoint of, as a user, as a user of the app, a caregiver, or an individual with a condition, what does that process look like? Like signing up, getting set up, all of that, that kind of thing.
Signing up it's super simple. What we're telling people to do is, go to the vitalsapp.com website, they sign up for the service and download the Vitals app. And then once they get the app, we mail them a beacon, or as many beacons as they need for their loved ones. Some families have multiple people that they could be a child and their parent or themselves that want the service. And then once they're in the app, we take them through a quick guided process, so that they can just simply tap on a few buttons to indicate their conditions that they want to share. And then we just have some text fields, so parents can put in whatever information they want, and they can even attach media files. And the reason why that's so important, I think, is that it gives law enforcement just another tool. So for instance, we have parents that are recording videos of themselves so that they can communicate with their loved one that the person that's there is there to keep them safe, and that they should listen to them. Some parents put in sign language videos for their nonverbal, kids, so that law enforcement has another tool. Some put in pictures of like their favorite toy or their dog, or a video clip, because that might be a de-escalation technique. This is a really flexible tool. You can set it up in, less than a couple minutes. And what parents love the most is they can update it every minute if they want to. We had a mom call us and just say, the thing I love about this app is that I can change it every day, because that's how quickly my son's conditions change, or the things that worked yesterday are different today. And I can update that and feel good that when my son is out in the community, that if he's having a moment, that they're going to have the most up-to-date information, from me on what I think is going to help the situation.
Well, in that video, I mean, that's something I hadn't thought of, was video communicating directly to the individual with the condition, but that could also be used for an officer, right? Like you could have, this is mom or the caregiver or whatever, explaining what's going on. That's kind of a powerful tool.
Yes. I mean, we've shown it to parents, and I've seen parents literally burst into tears the moment they see that, because they finally feel like they have something that can communicate for them. And what we've done is try to carve out a little bit of real estate on first responders' phones so that they've got the right tools and the right information at the right time. I mean,
Yeah.
this is really about 21st century policing and making sure that the right information is delivered, so that they can handle the situation as best as possible.
Well, because as a first responder, you're walking into a really unknown environment. You just don't know, right? What could be happening, what could be going on, and what dangers could be there.
Yes.
And this gives that first responder essentially a leg up, right? There's some context around, well, all of a sudden going from zero information and really just having to try to watch the behavior and make the right decision, to having lots of information
Right.
that will let you know, oh, this is a condition, and I see what's going on, and I've got
Right.
I've got support from the caregiver, maybe because I've got their phone number, and just so much information.
We've heard from a lot of families, that really like the idea, and they're like, but you know what, I'm always with my loved one. Like, I would always be there to communicate what's going on. But I got to tell you, I have just as many parents that sign up, that say they're always with their loved one, and this would have made an interaction they had with first responders better. This one mom, she signed up for the service because her husband and her son were out at the playground, and he didn't want to go home. And who doesn't want to go home from the playground, especially if you're a little kid?
Mm-hmm.
But the challenge was that, her son, has autism, and he's nonverbal, and he's a fleer. And the dad was trying to get his son to, leave the playground. It was time to go. And a sheriff's deputy drove by in a very small town and said, "That doesn't look normal to me. It looks like that kid's being abducted."
Right.
And so he pulled over and he questioned the dad for 45 minutes
Wow.
before he let him leave. And the dad felt overwhelmed. He couldn't communicate what's going on. His son, who's nonverbal and was in the middle of a level 5 meltdown,
Yeah.
wasn't giving the indicators to the officer that was even his dad. Plus, he's trying to, escape. He's kind of an escape artist, and we've gotten to know this family. And that's why they signed up, because if that officer had seen that and gotten the ping at about 80 feet or so,
Mm-hmm.
as he approached, he wouldn't have thought, "Oh my gosh, maybe this kid's being abducted. Maybe there's something else going on here. How can I help support the dad?" instead of, questioning him for 45 minutes. And there's that's no comment on that the officer did anything wrong. He was doing
No,
his job.
yeah, he was responding. Like, I'm glad that he would see that and pull over and say, this doesn't look right. But how terrifying for the father, and in
Yeah.
that situation, like, my heart goes out to him too.
Well,
What an awful thing.
yeah. Well, and Janae Harteau, who is the former police chief in Minneapolis, is our chief public safety officer, and she talks about, when we go meet with police departments and other first responders, that there's often a cost and a cost. There's a cost when police respond, and it's not that they respond. I'm not talking about when they respond and it's not, they don't handle the situation the right way, but when they handle the situation and they don't understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are $1 million lawsuits that are going on around the country because they misdiagnosed the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so the second cost is the mistrust that it breeds, that they don't have the training, or they don't know how to handle, people in all these various conditions, when, they just need a little bit more information. And that would make a big difference. It's not the silver bullet. It's not going to solve everything. It doesn't give people a free pass, but what it does do is change the way that our officers can deliver care to people that, that frankly, they might need a little bit of help in that moment.
Yeah. Wow. These are great stories, Nick. Hey, I'm curious. Could you describe a little bit about? So we've talked about kind of signing up and everything like that, but could you describe what does this cost? Like, is this expensive for the families?
Sure. So, Vitals is, we have a two-sided business. We charge police departments that join onto the program, and the costs are pretty minimal on that end. We charge about it's a software as a service model, so it's $9 a month, per officer. We do some implementation and onboarding and stuff to make sure they understand how to use the tool.
Yeah.
And then on the family side, we have a couple different options. So our standard service is available free to any family that wants this.
That's amazing.
We initially started at $9.95 a month, and we've had such a good reaction from families, and we just want to get it in the hands of as many people that need this. And so we are offering our service for free to families that want to sign up today.
Wow. So there's no economic hurdle here for the family at all. And it sounds like a pretty minimal fee from the law enforcement side too.
Yes. For families, and they get a free beacon when they sign up for the service. If they need to order a second or a third or a fourth beacon, it's about $25 that we're charging for our kind of entry level beacon.
Yeah.
We do have a couple premium services that some families want. They're just upgraded beacons, or we kind of call it beacon as a service. What we really want to make sure is that families are well stocked, and that if they lose the beacon, they can just call us and we can mail them another one. We have a waterproof beacon for families that are concerned about that. And we just want to make sure that as many people are covered as possible, and that we can deliver it in as many form factors, because there's so many diverse needs for different individuals. Some people are okay with wearing a lanyard around your neck. Some people want to have it on a keychain, and some people want to have it in their pocket, on their ankle. So there's a lot of different form factors. And before I forget, if you have an Android phone, you can use your Android phone to replace the pieces of plastic, and we have a free beacon app on Google Play Store. So for anyone that has a Google phone, or sorry, an Android enabled device, they can use that.
Okay, so basically the Android phone itself will serve as the beacon.
Yes. Yep. And send out the little coded single.
Yeah.
And if you lose it, we have families that have lost a beacon or two. If you lose a beacon, it's no big deal. There's no data on that beacon. If anyone else finds it, they're not going to get anything on it. We can deactivate it for them. And so we're really working hard to make sure this is as safe and secure as we can technically make it. And we just want to keep everybody safe.
Yeah, and I do want to talk about privacy and security next, but just before we move on, you had mentioned something about being an approved service provider, and I wanted to make sure that we mentioned that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So, we've met with, in Minnesota, we've met with the Department of Human Services and many counties across the state, and they want to make sure that families know that this resource is available. And even better, we have just received our approval to be a approved service provider for families that have waiver funding, and they can use their waiver funding to pay for any of our premium services. And our premium services, I mean, this is still all low cost stuff. So I mean, it's less than $20 a month, for families that want this. And if a family has a CADI waiver, a DD waiver, a brain injury waiver, an elderly waiver, community CDCS, community directed support service grant, family support grants, those can all be used to sign up, or they can use those funds to sign up for our service. All they need to do is contact their case manager, let them know that they'd like the service, and they can reach out to us directly, and let us know that they've got someone that wants the service, and we will get them signed up and make sure that they're as protected as possible.
That's cool. Nick, let's finish up with privacy and security here. So you mentioned that the beacons have no data on them, and if they're lost, it's not a big deal. They can be easily replaced. You can remotely disable them, right?
Correct. Correct.
And so what other thoughts do you have around the sort of privacy and security? I would think that would be a big question for families.
Oh yeah, no, it totally is. What we tell families, and we want to make sure that they understand that, only they have access as caregivers, they have access to the individual profiles that they create, and they can
Okay.
share that with other people. So, for instance, I can share my son's information with my wife, and we can both manage that profile, and only we have access to it. Nobody else has access to it. That information is safe and secure on our private cloud server. It's where we keep all the information, and it's backed up and it's encrypted. And then all of the transmission data. So even when a signal is sent from the Bluetooth beacon to the first responder's phone, that's an encrypted signal that's sent. It's decrypted by the phone. It goes up, sends an encrypted transmission to the cloud. Again, same thing when it comes back down on the officer's phone. So, we are working to make sure that this thing is as protected and safe as secure as we can, humanly make it.
Yeah, I think it is a really key point to mention that. So the data is private on basically Vital's server.
Mm-hmm.
The data is never at any point on any server owned or controlled by law enforcement or
Correct.
any agency. This is
Correct.
all a private business,
Yep.
privately controlled. The only access that they have is on the app within 80 feet of the beacon. And at
Correct.
that point, they only have access to the data for that individual, right?
Yes, that's correct. And only authorized first responders get that access.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, interesting. Yeah, so yeah, that's a good point. They have to have the department actually has to have signed up, gone through that process, and they individually you have an ID verification kind of process going on, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yep. With
yeah.
each department, and then each officer that has the app on their department issued phone. Sometimes some departments treat their smartphones kind of like walkie talkies, and that they assign them to a police car or to an individual while they're on shift. So there's a couple different ways that police officers and departments do this, but they're all we are going off of their vetted system to give them access.
So Nick, tell me a little bit about how this is growing and how you're getting the word out.
Yeah, so it has been growing so quickly. We have lots of families that are signing up. We just crossed another major milestone. We have over 600 families that have signed up. As word continues to snowball out, more and more families join it. In just the last 2-3 weeks, we've had about 300 families sign up for Vitals, which is
That's great.
which is just amazing. And we have 23 departments. 95% of them are here in our home state of Minnesota. We had a police and fire department in Cadiz, Ohio, join, and I'll talk about that special story in a minute. But what that means is that we've got over 1,100 officers registered in our authorized first responders registered in our system. And we are working to get this in the hands of as many first responders as possible, so that we can, our next big milestone is to make sure that, our metro area police departments, as many as possible, have this, so that we can, continue to, just create safer communities wherever we go. And so we work with families to help to connect to other families in the area. We have some really motivated, I kind of call them, super moms and super dads that, are helping us connect to families in areas even outside of Minnesota. So, a mom in Cadiz, Ohio, she went and signed up her police department and fire department, and then messaged us saying, "We are all ready to go for Vitals. What do we got to do next?" And
Wow.
that was it blew us away. I mean, that's, I think anytime you come up with an idea and you start moving it forward and you hope that people like it. But we have families that, they're really making this their thing. I mean, I had a mom call me 2 weeks ago and she said, I heard about this app in the newspaper. And I turned to my husband and said, I just figured out my calling in life. It's to make sure that everybody in our community has this. And it just blows me away. I mean, obviously we're passionate about it. We're really excited, but we are humbled every day by, what parents and families and other police departments, when they talk to us about what they like and what they love about this. That's why we get up.
Well, it can be hard to get people excited about technology these days. There's so much of it, right? It means you're really doing something special, I think.
Thank you. Well, we're working as hard as we can, and we're meeting some very, very, special people, very, very, motivated parents and advocates all over the country now, and we're asking them to, join us on this movement to, create safer communities and become part of the Vitals family. I mean, if we do this together, this is about a tool for communities to make their world safer. But that means we need to do it with our partners, our law enforcement partners, our fire departments, our EMTs, so that they have the information they need, to best interact and support the community that they serve. It's really cool how it just kind of works.
That is awesome. And so, if folks want to get in touch and get signed up or help spread the word, what's the best way for them to connect with you or with Vitals?
Sure. So, we're asking families to, sign up for the service, to share our website, www.thevitalsapp.com. You simply click the sign up button and you can get started for free. We also have a text service set up. So if you text Vitals to 797979, we send you a link. You can get signed up that way. We love families to reach out to us on our Facebook page. It's at the Vitals app. They can message us directly. We love when people reshare the post. We try to get in there every day to respond directly to families, and we're happy to send out brochures and information and videos that they can share with their first responders and city councils and friends and family in the area that they think need the service or would want the service. Again, this is all volunteer. This is all voluntarily shared with law enforcement. So you share as much or as little as you want, but what we really want to signal, to the world is that, we can use information for good. And law enforcement is there to care, and they want the information because they want to deliver the best care. First responders, EMTs want to have that little piece of medical information. So for instance, for me, I have a very simple profile. It says I have Tourette's, it says that I'm a dad, I've got some kids. Yeah, I have my medical information in there that says, hold the phone, I'm allergic to iodine. But that little information might change the way that EMT responds to a situation where, if I'm not able to communicate, this can do it for me. And so, I just encourage families that have, invisible or visible conditions and disabilities that, this is a great way to share the information that you want. And if you don't want to share any information, that's totally okay by us too. But we would love your support, and we'd love to get the word out that this is a tool that exists, a resource for families and a tool for law enforcement and first responders.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And Nick, we actually met at IoT Fuse 2018 conference where you were there. I believe you were about to give a presentation, and you had an officer with you, I think.
Actually, we were there to support our Plymouth, Minnesota police chief, Chief Goldstein, who was giving a talk on how they're using technology to enhance and improve how they deliver care in the city of Plymouth and what that kind of looks like as a model for other police departments. And of course, they're an early adopter of the Vitals concept, and we will be rolling out in Plymouth shortly as well. So really, really excited about that.
Yeah, well, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show today, Nick. This has been fantastic, and I absolutely love what you have built here with Vitals. I think it is fantastic, and I can see it doing a lot of good, both for first responders and for the individuals with these conditions. So great work. This was an awesome conversation, and it's really my pleasure to have had you on the show. So.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Our team is super excited, and we're just happy to get the word out, and that we can do our small part to try to make the world a little safer. So thank you so much.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Welcome back. What a great interview. Don't you think, Cliff?
That was just amazing. I totally agree. I love the fact that it's free for users, and if you can, please be an advocate for Nick and for the Vitals app. I think this is one of those where every community could use something like this.
Yeah, it's a game changer, and can really help turn some of those stories around that we hear in the news. So, so excited about this technology. So. Absolutely. And if you have feedback for us, please feel free to shoot us a message at podcast@gearforgesoftware.com, or you can find us on Twitter. We're at Gearforge IoT, and we would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We hope you'll join us again for next week's show. And until then, so long and be well. Bye, Cliff.